Welcome back to another episode of the Men's Talk Show today. And we have another guest, Telvin. We're going to be talking about the workplace, specifically Black, and how they are handled in the workplace. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Telvin, where you're from and what you do, and then we can get into the topic today.
Well, my name is Telvin Peterson. I am from the state of South Carolina. I'm a licensed mental health therapist and licensed addiction counselor. Currently, I run my own private practice, um, inner depth counseling and consulting LLC, and I also work with the Department of Corrections, primarily in the addictions program. So I deal with a lot of co-occurring disorders, and the clients I see from are range from ages to 18 to I think the oldest client I had was about like 74. So I definitely see a lot of different men between my private practice and within the Department of Corrections, and that's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, so could you just take us a little bit into the business of like how it all came to be and what made you start before we get into the main topic?
hmm Um, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, if any of you have ever watched the movie The Wire, that's kind of what the environment is like, depending on where you are. I didn't necessarily grow up in that environment, but some of the things you saw, I was definitely around at some point. But for me, I saw myself kind of headed down that path, but I think it wasn't until I started playing sports that really everything just kind of changed for me. Playing football in high school to the point of playing collegiately, I pretty much thought, like everybody, I'm going to make it to the league. I'm going to get my mom out of this situation. This is what we're going to do. And that's what's going to be. But injuries, you know, had a different idea. So ended up coming to a place where I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I started to look at what things I'm actually good at. And that was always kind of just helping people. I made up my mind a long time ago. I wanted to do something with the youth. It wasn't until I got a lot older I said, okay, to really do something, to make an impact, I have to do something, but I have to change something. So eventually I ended up just going back to school, getting licensed, and becoming a therapist. And I had an opportunity to work in the Department of Corrections. I said, okay, maybe I may not be able to help youth in a way that I originally thought, but I think this might be even better. And along the way, I saw the value in not only helping the youth, but helping people who were in my age groups, maybe even older. But I really have an affinity for just like helping people, and especially men and black men for sure. This is obviously I'm a black man, so just being in a space where I can be a representative and showing guys, okay, these things are necessary. These things are there's a lot of capabilities you might have, and these things aren't just an anomaly. Like you are capable of achieving things as well. And coming from that place, I've been in the field really for a long time, but being licensed for probably about what 7 or so years now, 15 years or more. Just experience with either being a peer support or just being a person who has some level of, I've been doing this for that long, basically.
Yeah, that's good to hear that you've been, helping the youth as long as you can. Um Now we're going to get into the topic of workplace, some of our experiences that we have, and I'm going to share some of my experiences too because I've definitely
Okay.
got a lot
hmm
that I can pull from. And I'm sure a lot of black men that's watching this, or just men in general, can relate to, not overlooked, being overlooked for promotion or, looking to see how maybe they treat their white counterparts better or, they're their first picks for, a promotion, or try to gaslight us into thinking that, we're good for a particular spot for where we are currently
hmm
and not,
hmm
you know. So, without further ado, I'm going to let you go ahead and speak to your experience.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, there are not many men in this field, as far as therapy and counseling. There are male social workers. There are not many male therapists. I guess some people kind of say they're within the same field, somewhat, but not exactly. But being in a field of helping and serving others is predominantly dominated by women, and I'm usually the only male. Majority of the time, I'm the only male, and because I'm a male and because I'm a bigger guy, I'm often pigeonholed into these caricatures or these archetypes of, okay, because I'm big, because I'm a large man, then I have to be the butte, I have the brute, I have to be the enforcer, I have to be the scary person, I have to, be the discipliner, I have to show up in this type of way. And I can. Playing football, I've learned how to turn it on and turn it off, and sometimes my mind is other places where I'm just in another place. But a lot of times I'm looked at or it's believed that I'm supposed to show up in this way. If I don't show up in that way, then oftentimes like, well, he's not ready, he's not this, he's not that. I'm like, how do you know? Right? Have you given me an opportunity, or have you sat down with me long enough to get a proper, I don't know, idea about what I'm capable of? And that was my experience dating back since probably since high school. Um, Definitely experienced it in college. Definitely experienced it in the workplace. And just even in social interactions, like people looked at me to be the bully, the enforcer, whatever the case may be. Right? People looked at me to do something or potentially do harm to somebody else because I was just a bigger guy. Um, that was always a thing, kind of growing up in the workplace, where they wanted me to show up more, which I kind of ended up falling into that role. But I also don't like being told what to do because I like to have my own level of autonomy. So the way I handle things is quite different. I don't have to use my stature to intimidate people to get them to do things that I want them to do. I more so speak with them with logic, reason, and treat them like they're somebody. And my biggest asset is really rapport building. So I allow myself to build rapport with anybody, and then use that and leverage that away. Okay, we talked about this, or what did we talk about last time? Like, there's is what we talked about last time, is that aligning with what's happening right now? Let's talk about it. And after we have those conversations, it tends to really help them visualize where they want to be and help them align their actions with their mouth. So there's things like that. There's situations where I felt like in some situations I was treated more harshly, or my actions were more so of a behavioral thing rather than, and we use this word a lot in therapy, pathology or pathologizing, and which we look at a behavior and we say, oh, this person has this, or this behavior is because of this. And I see a lot of that for one. And I believe sometimes just being a black man and and and, and a person really not understanding or sitting down to try to understand, they develop their own understanding of why you do something, why you don't do something. So the thought might be you don't care, or the thought might be you're incompetent, or whatever the case may be. And the concern isn't necessarily about the person. The concern is more so about, okay, are they able to do whatever we want this person to do, for example. Um, and I've seen where there's people who have been in leadership roles who weren't sure of themselves, and constantly looking for reassurance, and then here I go and say, okay, is it? I think it's safe enough for me to ask these type of questions, but it seems like when I ask these questions, it's perceived in a different way. Whereas this person may ask this question, and I think they get true and honest feedback, and that not or is no fear that they may lose out on opportunities. Whereas if I were to ask these questions, then I'm not ready. So it kind of creates this thing where in a workplace, where is it really safe to ask for help? Is asking if is it when I'm asking for help, does it to them, does it seem like I don't know what I'm doing, or I need too much help? And does that stop me from future promotions? And if does that stop me from moving up later on, because it doesn't seem like I'm confident enough to make certain decisions, or I'm seeing my unsure? Even if I go to them with a question, which I already kind of made up my mind about what I wanted to do, It's kind of go for reinsurance and clarity to make sure I'm making the right decision. And then they perceive that as, or they already have an idea about what I'm trying to do without actually hearing what I'm trying to do. So I'm like, okay, is it really safe to come and talk to you, or is it not? That can go on and on, but those are just some of the things that I really started to notice, and I think can be a hindrance. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you always feel like you're being gaslit. Like you don't really know if is this thing bias, racial bias, was what I just experienced a form of microaggression. Like what was that? Or am I overthinking it? Or or am I just looking into things that when I shouldn't have, and things are not what I make it seem to be? And that's kind of one of the things where I kind of hold over my head. I'm like, okay, is it this or is it not that? Then trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, those are that's a lot to unpack there. And I think a lot of times men, we do downplay our intelligence sometimes because we don't ever want to feel like we are overshadowing people that might be less educated. We're not ready for this conversation. Nobody is, but it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
had, and I'm going to have it. I was working in corporate when I was just first starting out, kind of getting my feet wet. And, I noticed a disparity between blacks and whites. And I'm like, it's not that many black people here, and it's more white people. And this is not me, justifying anything that, you know, taking away from what the white people have done, in that company specifically. But they have to understand that we have to bring in more diversity in this company where I was at, because it's not enough decision making on behalf of, the black people. And when you look at the disparity between blacks and whites, you see that, they're making all of these decisions, and it's not really reflective of everybody in the company. It's only like, 95% of the white on the top executives making all these decisions that might not be, best for everybody. And it's important to understand that if you don't have a diverse team, you're not going to get much done anyway, or you're not going to
Yeah.
be, or it's not going to be reflective of everything that needs to be done within the company. And so, I try to play it cool, and, you know, it's gonna be a lot. It was a lot of racism that was going on in the company that I was with, and even though white woman had made a remark, be like, "What's this black nigger doing here?" And blatantly, someone even heard it. Another coworker heard her say that, and I was thinking to myself, she blatantly, racism. Like it's, overtly, you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of hide it, sweep it on the road, but she said it, and my other coworkers was like, "That's not right," and it was coming from another
Mm-hmm.
white coworker. So I had proof, that she was a racist, but I never pursued it because I never wanted to be that person that will disrupt the whole company and make this into something bigger than what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of like play it off cool. Um, but she understood what she did was wrong too. She understood that, and I understood that, and everybody that was around that heard her understood that. But it was kind of like swept over under the rug. But we need
Mm-hmm.
to, as black men or black women, we need to start advocating for ourselves when something is wrong. Speak up when things is wrong. And when you see things is not reflective of everybody in the company and everybody else is making the top, you need to be that disruptor to say that. Because that's how change gets started. If you always sit
Yeah.
back and being quiet and never say anything and just let things go under the rug, you never know, you could be that change that make the company grow. You could be the change that make bring in more, equity and inclusion, where they start making these changes and it's not just so white. You see more Hispanics, you see more blacks, you see more Latinos. Like you just have to be able to advocate for yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's really hard when you have, racist boss, or you have people that's majority that's not reflective of your skin color. And then the whole nother conversation is, if I say something, will I get fired? Because
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I say something and I see that things are not going exactly where they need to go, or where people is just plainly disrespecting you because of your skin color. You know, do I say something? Do I speak up for myself? Because they want me out of there anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want me to be in the company anyway. And so if I say something, that is going to make it more worse for me, because I'm disposable at any time. They don't want me there. So, and then there's the other conversation where this is, a lot of people don't talk about this part, but where they blatantly try to make it hard for you, so you can leave, so you can want to quit.
Yeah.
And I, I was talking to a friend about this like a year ago, and he said he had the same experience, kind of some of the experiences that I did in the company. And I just think to myself, you know, how can you say that you're, equity and diversion inclusion company when the majority of the people is white here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not divert. That's not inclusion and equity. That's not. I'm When you look at it, 95% is white people, and then like maybe 2 or 3% is black or the Hispanic people. That's just not, the numbers are not adding up. And so when I say that, to say that because a lot of people don't know that they can advocate for themselves. But sometimes this is another thing that I had to find out too, working in corporate, is that HR doesn't have your back.
Mm-hmm.
They have the company's back. And I was so young into my career when I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna just go to HR about some of these problems and see what they can handle. But they don't. They're doing is just trying to make the company look good, and so it doesn't turn into a potential lawsuit. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn when I was growing up. They don't want to actually take care of the problems. They just want to sweep them under and say, "Oh, we'll just take care of it. Just tell us." But they really don't do shit. And that's my problem. The HR should be in the interest of both parties, not
Yeah.
just the company itself. And I had to learn that. And I'm like, okay, I see how this company is moving. And so I say all that is to say that sometimes you have to be your biggest advocate, or in worst case scenarios, just stack your bread and learn to move on from a company. Don't keep standing in a toxic environment where
Mm-hmm.
they're not appreciating everything you do, or sometimes they will literally steal your ideas and make them their own ideas. And I I had a you know, top person that actually did that. They wanted me to do all of the work, all the research, and then he'd take the credit when the actual executives come in and say, "Oh, this is what I did. This is the company projection." I'm thinking in my mind, you didn't do shit. You just gave it off to somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, and you made yourself look good because you want that
What is
bonus.
that? That's one of the 48 laws of power.
Yeah,
I
and
forget which
I
one
just
that
don't
is,
agree with
but
that. So I always just
yeah.
say, if you are in a toxic work environment, like, you can leave. There are better other jobs. You don't have to keep dealing with the bullshit. You don't have to keep, sacrificing and trying to prove that, you can be the best employee, because at the end of the day, none of these companies care about you. They're gonna dispose you when it's time, like when they see when their shareholders are not happy, or when they're getting
Yeah.
ready, when they're just really want to cut the workforce and cut the budget in half. They're going to always look at the person that is performing the least, or might be even performing the best, but they still have to cut you because they
Mm-hmm.
just don't, maybe they personally don't like you. And so I say you have to start making your own tables. You have to start building your own wealth. And that's what I try to tell people. Like, it's so many ways to make money in life, and don't depend on your one job, because if you depend on your one job, after all the years of sacrifice and they still overlook you, what does that say? What does that say
Mm-hmm.
about the company? They don't care, you know.
Yeah. Ah.
And yeah, and I just think now I want to kind of turn the conversation around. Like, if has there ever been an experience where you maybe dealt with racism, firsthand from top executives or just employees of the company, and maybe you didn't advocate for yourself, and how did you deal with that? or if you know somebody else that maybe some friends or family that went through that situation, how did they deal with that, or was it just a messy situation and they couldn't get
Mm.
themselves out of
Um, I don't think I personally experienced like over racism in the workplace. Definitely, there was some microaggressions, certain conversations that were had. Um, Actually, I do remember. I remember two. Remember two. One I was in when I was in undergrad. Another one um, not too long ago. The first one, it was more so. I forget what the topic was, but it was myself and a coworker of mine. Um, I think he still has locks, and we work in a commissary area, so we were doing like loading, unloading, um, stuff like that, like shipping and receiving type of things. And somebody dropped a do rag on the ground, and the coworker was the older white gentleman. Was like, "That's yours, isn't it?" And I'm looking at my coworker, and we looking at him. I'm like, "He not just say that." And he was like, "That's not mine. I can't even wear a do rag." Yes, it is. That's yours. And it was like it started like that, and then eventually it went to something about um, I think it was on Martin Luther King Day or holiday or whatnot, and he said something about Malcolm X, and like, it was your people who killed him. Like, we didn't prompt none of this. It was like things like that he would say. Eventually he stopped. I think I believe I said something to him. Somebody else said something to him. Another time, it was a different situation, different person. We were talking about a client. Was assessing this. I don't think we were even assessing this client, but this client was like 6'3", 300 pounds. He was a bigger guy too, and he was having like a psychotic episode or whatnot, and I forget what we were talking about, but he had charges of kidnapping, and for some reason, my white colleague decided to say something about shooting him being shot and killed, and saying that I should relate to that. And I'm like, what made you think that was an appropriate thing to say to me as a black man, talking about another black man who looks like me, him being shot and killed? That really made me uncomfortable. And it was that situation. It was a couple with him. I can at least recall three different situations, but that was one of the conversations that stood out to me, that I had to say, look, I'm not having this conversation with you. And the thing about it, I had to tell him this several times before he stopped. He's one of those people, he wants to keep going until you understand, until you like gets it or understand him. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And then he just went on like he didn't say what he said. And that made me, like, this was a person who was supposed to be a supervisor. Technically he wasn't. But he was just in a lead role. And I just didn't want to interact with this person because of that. So it'll be small things like that. And working in South Carolina, I get to see different personalities. And even though you don't know a person's political view, you can kind of tell their political view by some of the conversations that they have. I just sat on or been around certain people when they had certain conversations. I'm like, yeah, this is a person I would definitely not want to be around if this wasn't in the workplace, right? I never want to be around this person outside the workplace. And this isn't so much the ideologies, it's so much like how they go about expressing them openly without any fear of repercussions or any care about the people they're around. Um, but I think that was the more covert of microaggressions. I've seen racism in the workplace. I've seen how racial stereotypes show up in a workplace, and how even folks who look like you play into that. Um, and as I mentioned before, I work with a lot of women, and it's like, and what's the word I'm looking for? It's like certain cultures will, and I don't mean like black culture versus white cultures. I mean like work cultures, and specifically in the setting that I work, It's a high stress environment, and it's like if for the individuals who are incarcerated, one of the things that they do is they try to like staff split, um, and they try to use any form of manipulation to gain some type of advantage. And a lot of times, what can happen is if you have a common enemy, then you start to not intentionally, but you kind of click with this person, and you start to cast eyes, or you start to shun and gang up on that common enemy. And I see that a lot in the workplace, especially in this type of environment. And I see how one person can use, what is said about, you know, for example, black women in the workspace, and use that and say, okay, this person meets the full criteria and this is what's going on. Then they kind of go into it, they live it out, they manifest it, and it kind of becomes something that it shouldn't have been, but it becomes a lot greater than what it really is. Um, I've seen it from all sides, but I haven't had any overt racism directed towards me.
Yeah. And that's understandable. Sometimes, people are not gonna have, you know, direct racism, in the workplace because, some people do have, they want to do it on the side or treat you bad or just do it in ways that's not so
Mhm.
obvious.
Yeah.
And so now, the conversation is coming to a wrap here. But I do thank you for coming on and talking. And I would like to ask you if you would like to join our safe space group where we talk about continuously have conversations. Every other Sunday from 4:30 to 5:30. Where we talk about, just men's mental health, just different
Mhm.
topics, relationships, and things of that nature.
For sure. Yeah.
That's another group that I can add you to because I'm one of the admins of that. Um,
Uh-huh.
we we even have people, our guests, come on, onto that show and talk about their experiences or even lead discussions. And I think you would be a good fit for that because it's a true brotherhood where we have conversations, relationships, friendships, just general men's mental health topics and things like that. And I think you would be a good fit for that group.
Okay.
I'll send you the link for that.
Okay. Well,
Would you like to promote your business? If you are you still accepting clients or
yeah, I'm still accepting clients.
okay?
So
Could you
right
just share a
now,
little bit about that?
yeah. So right now I'm accepting clients within the state of South Carolina for my therapy practice. Again, it's inner depth counseling and consulting LLC. I do consulting there. I also do coaching and consultation. So right now I'm taking clients in the state of South Carolina for therapy. I'm also accepting clients for coaching. Coaching programs a little bit different. Um, I can see clients outside of the state of South Carolina. When it comes to therapy practice, I say my main areas of focus is addictions, anger, anxiety, and depression. My coaching practice, I am helping high achieving men who feel stuck. Um, these are the men who know what to do, have planned out things, but one thing goes wrong and everything kind of falls apart. And those are the men I work well with. Those are the men I like helping. But that's more so in my coaching business. But I do not have an active website. However, I can be found on Psychology Today. It's search Telvin Peterson and you'll find me. And if you want to do the therapy or you want to do the coaching, see me an email. We can do it that way.
Okay. All right. I got some brothers that I think will be interested in that, and I can. It's okay if I can send you their way, or just have a discussion with them and see if it's a
Yeah.
good fit. Okay.
Yeah. Even reach out to me via LinkedIn and that'll work as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I do thank you for being on the show. I will be sending you the link when this does come out, this episode, and then I'm going to be sending you the link to join the group today, right after this
Okay.
call. So, um, please do join, and then I can add you as a friend on Facebook so we can get you into the group and so you can meet the other brothers. But I do thank you for coming on here, Telvin. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise,
Um,
likewise.
and I want to keep this conversation going. So if you ever,
Mhm.
have another topic and you want to come back on and meet my other co-hosts, that would be great. And we look forward because we want to keep helping men around the world. So we've been doing this show for 4 years now. Next year
Mhm.
will be 5 years, and
Okay.
I'm proud of
Congrats.
myself for just kind of impacting men. We saved a
Mhm.
lot of men off camera. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
From taking them for taking their lives because they had a safe space and no one showed up for them.
Mhm.
And we created a lot of friends throughout the years. We have a whole Discord channel. It's a lot of work that we've been doing outside of this. Once we turn off the camera, it's real life, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And we've been helping people, and we're proud of that. And we need more men to talk about their feelings, and
Mhm.
that starts with you, me, and everybody else that wants to continue to help men. But I do
Yeah.
thank you, and just look forward to that message I'm going to send you on LinkedIn.
All right. Again, appreciate you. Thank you for having me. Next time maybe we can talk a little longer.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good day.
All right, you too.